Hey guys, my name is Bethany, and I used to work for the post office. I had to deliver all kinds of packages to the strangest people. But I never had such a scary and horrible experience as I did that one time. The time I had to send a Craigslist package to the wrong people. That day, I had to deliver a small box. I was alone, as my shipping partner was sick, although he asked me not to tell the bosses. Once I arrived, I rang the doorbell, and a strange lady came out of the house. The lady was very poorly cared for, possibly at least 70 years old. She asked me to come into the house with her. Initially, I said no. I had to keep working, but I must admit that after she insisted, I felt a little sorry for her, as she told me she needed my help to open the contents of the box. Once I entered the house, strange things happened. The lady locked the door immediately. I asked her why she did that, but she replied that she did it for security reasons. I sat at her table while she made me a cup of tea. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but it wouldn't kill me to take a little break. While I was waiting for the tea, the lady was behaving stranger and stranger. She started rambling, telling me things that didn't make sense, as if she was talking to someone in front of her, but at the same time answering herself. The lady poured me a cup of tea, and when I tasted it, I spit it out immediately. It tasted terrible, like drinking dirty water. I immediately apologized to the lady, but she didn't pay any attention. She just stared at me with a terrifying smile that paralyzed me from head to toe. I was about to stand up and leave, but I felt something on my feet. For sure it was a dog. I was too scared to pet or even look at the dog that was licking my feet. So to cut the tension, I told the lady that her dog was very cute. Her response froze me in my tracks. "Dear, what are you talking about? I don't have any pets." I slowly bent down, and there it was. That was not a dog, but an old man. I screamed and fell backwards, hurting my back. From under the table came out an old man in diapers. His smile was as tetric as a lady's, and he was also staring at me. Without saying anything, I ran as fast as I could. I wanted to go out the normal door, but it was locked. Suddenly, both old people were in front of me. I know I could have defended myself, but my body prevented me from doing so. I fell crying to the ground, at the mercy of the decrepit but terrifying elders. I heard a noise when I opened my eyes. The door was open. "Silly, you can't leave if the door is locked." I ran out of the house, watching as the two old men greeted me with wide eyes and huge smiles. As I got into the van, I checked the details of their purchase. They were the ones in charge of receiving the package, but at the same time, they were the ones who sent it. Hey, my name is Trish. I'm one of the babysitters that, although I'm good with kids, have a hard time interacting with other adults and making myself known as a babysitter. Using Craigslist, I got several babysitting jobs, but this little job didn't last long, as something forced me to interrupt it. At first, it seemed like a normal job with just a little quirk. A single father had hired me to babysit his son. When I arrived at the house, there was no one there, just a little boy who came to greet me with a big hug and lots of kisses on my face. As the afternoon progressed, everything became stranger. Although he was a big boy, about 10 years old, he needed my help with almost everything. He would ask me to help him eat, to stroke his head, to take off his clothes because the room was too warm. I was surprised that a child of that age required so much attention. Possibly that's how the father had raised him. After eating, it was time to go to sleep, but the father had written that he could eat ice cream. The child not only ate in a disgusting and repulsive way, putting it in his mouth with his hands and dirtying everything, but to make it worse, he would put his hands with ice cream in my mouth for me to taste. If I refused, he would cry and make a lot of noise until I finally gave in. After that, I began to smell a very strange but familiar smell. That's when I realized that the boy hadn't made it to the bathroom. So not only did he make me clean his clothes, but I had to clean him as well. After that, the time finally came. He was finally going to take a bath and then go to sleep. I took off all his clothes, although for some reason he was too shy to take off his underwear. But I accepted it. In the worst case scenario, I could wash him later. During a shower, the boy asked me to soap him, to wash him, and even threw water on my top. It was all very uncomfortable. I had never dealt with anyone like this before. It only made me wonder who was a strange man who had raised him. The only thing I knew was that I didn't want to be there when he arrived. I grabbed all the boy's clothes and went into his room to get a towel until a smell I didn't recognize this time made me look under the bed. When I did, I couldn't help but scream in terror. Under the bed was a corpse. It was still fresh. What could have caused this? Suddenly, a phone started ringing from the dining room and I ran over. Maybe it was a boy's father. I had to tell him to call the police. The killer might still be nearby. I had to take the boy away as soon as possible. I ran downstairs, but the noise of the phone came from a cell phone that was under an armchair. When I bent down to grab it, I not only had the phone in my hands, but something else. It was an ID card of a man over 30 years old. I knew that face. It was the face of the child I was taking care of. That wasn't a child. That was a grown man. Suddenly, I heard a scream at the top of the stairs. It was him, looking at me while laughing with a face full of perversion and cruelty. He knew I'd found out the truth. "Hey Trish, I've had my bath. Will you tell me a bedtime story?" In shock, I ran out for the exit while he was still laughing. He never tried to chase me. He never tried to kill me. He just enjoyed seeing me terrified, crying, and trying to get away. I called the police immediately. Although they found no one, they discovered that the body belonged to a man who lived alone in the house and had no children. I used to think nothing was scarier than the paranormal, the occult. Ghosts and ghouls seemed genuinely terrifying to me. I didn't know that there was something even scarier: normal human beings, people who are still alive. It all started one cold Friday morning. Halloween was almost a month away, but even so, I wanted to go ahead and order my Freddy Krueger costume. So I ordered everything on Craigslist. When the order arrived, I was overjoyed. The Craigslist delivery man was a normal man. No feature of his face was striking. His hairstyle was nothing special, and his physical build was unremarkable. Nothing about him was remarkable. So why he scared me so much was inexplicable. It was as if something around him gave me a bad feeling, as if a terrifying aura surrounded him. Trying to ignore my feeling, I went to get my things, and he spoke to me. "You're having a costume party, aren't you?" As he said this, his face changed completely. The man flashed me a huge grin from ear to ear. As he did so, all his facial features hardened. His eyes were still the same, but his gaze had changed. It was piercing and intimidating. He may have just asked me a simple question, but those words pierced my ears like blades. How do you know?" Without answering me, he looked at the bag in the direction of Freddy's glove. "Of course, silly me. I'm preparing in advance my Halloween costume, that's all. You know, my friends and I like Halloween very much. We usually dress up as clowns." "That is cool. Although for us, Halloween is all year round. Someday I'll show you my clown costume. I'm sure you'll be delighted." "Yes, someday. Have a nice day." The man didn't answer me. He just kept staring at me with a huge smile. As I opened the door to my house, I could see him slowly raise his hand and waving it back and forth. He waved at me. A few nights later, my wife had left with her friends, so I was going to spend the night alone with my 4-year-old son. I was sitting there watching a horror movie when suddenly I heard a car pull up to my house. A scary man dressed as a clown was walking slowly towards my house. Was this man the Craigslist driver? The man quickly arrived at my house and immediately rang the doorbell over and over again as his ghoulish grin grew bigger and bigger. He knew I was home. He knew that each ring scared me more than the last. In desperation, I called the police and told them to come urgently, that there was a scary man dressed as a clown at my door. They told me to stay on the line, but I cut the phone to go get my son, who was in his room. I couldn't believe it. The man dressed as a clown had broken into my house. He just followed me in slow motion, enjoying every step I took up the stairs. After covering the door with a piece of furniture, I locked myself in the room and hugged my son. The clown started banging violently on the door while laughing frenetically. Suddenly, the banging stopped, and I saw something slide under the door. It was pictures of my son sleeping through the night. This man had been in my house before. We just didn't know it. After that silence, I heard several footsteps in my house until those footsteps came into the room. It was the police. They were never able to identify the clown, and when I told them it was the same man from Craigslist, they were able to identify him, but never found him. Apparently, that was his last delivery.